Hello everyone, my name is Melinda Hart. You are watching Stamping with Hart. I am an independent demonstrator with Stampin Up. You can find more information about me and my projects on my blog. I also have instructions and shopping lists and all of that lovely stuff on my blog at stampingwithhart.blogspot.com. So let me just tell you a little bit about what's going on today. I am working with the March Paper Pumpkin Kit. This is the Beyond the Horizon March 22 Paper Pumpkin Kit. I am a huge Paper Pumpkin fan personally. It's actually how I started with Stampin' Up! Before I became a demonstrator. And I love making alternatives every month. So what's happening here is this is a big kit for anybody who loves Paper Pumpkin, because March is the birthday month for Paper Pumpkin, and they always include, or at least I should say they have been including, a bonus stamp set. So we have our every month stamp set that you get with you get a stamp set every month in the Paper Pumpkin Kit. And in the March kit, we got a bonus stamp set. I'm designing behind the scenes right now. So I'm actually designing before my live tonight, and I decided I'm going to record it. One of the reasons that I do alternate projects is that I can give you ways or alternate ideas for a way to extend your kit, get more cards or projects out of your kits, find different ways to use it. There are a few things I want to point out that I like to do right away if I'm designing alternate projects. And the first thing is I look for the coordinating colors, the coordinating Stampin' Up! Colors. I pull those. So I grabbed all of my ink pads in those shades, and then I stamp them out so that I can get an idea for the color palette. I'll grab some of my coordinating cardstock, maybe not every color, but some of them. And I will typically just start working. So with this month's kit, I did film myself like just going through the contents of the kit. I'll be sure to show that. But this is what the envelopes look like. There are actually 3 different envelope patterns and styles. And so whenever I see that, I will immediately start to cut up the envelope. Okay, so that's what it looked like before I cut it. Let me just put it back together for you. You know, so this is what the envelope looked like before I started to cut it, and you can see we're already in deep with our coordinating colors here. We have pale papaya on this side, we have old olive on this side, we have some misty moonlight in here, we have some green here, so a little bit more of our old olive. And then we have a combination. So we're looking at some bumblebee here, some old olive, some misty moonlight, you know, in combination. So you can immediately start to get ideas just from taking a look at this. But there's another step to this. So when I started cutting up that envelope, I was like, you know what? I might as well just film myself doing this, because I can walk you guys through how I design alternate projects. Sometimes I just show you the alternate card and just make that card, but I don't quite get into my process. So I guess I'm going to make it a little bit different today. And you guys can let me know if you like that or not, if that's something that interests you. So here, Paper Pumpkin will also show alternate projects that they have created, which I absolutely love. And it's always on the back of your instructions there. Okay. So the first thing I want to say is the cards that Paper Pumpkin makes, they're always beautiful. If you don't want to worry about alternate projects, you don't have to. You just go ahead and make the cards right out of the box, and they're going to be great. For me, I always love to play and experiment. Now, one of the patterns that I noticed with this month's kit is that we have a lot of repeat colors. So we have 2 blues, we have 2 greens, we have 2 oranges, and then we have bumblebee, which is kind of like right in that middle space, you know, yellow to orange and all of that. So I'm adding in my own extra yellow so that I have 2 yellows to work with too. And that's so saffron, okay? And the reason that I'm doing that is because the bonus stamp set, which let me get a piece of white cardstock here so you can see this stamp set really well. So if you look at this, this is actually a 2-step stamp set, meaning you stamp one of your stamps in one color, you stamp the other detail stamp in another color, and then that brings out really pretty details in your alternate projects. So it's a little hard to see here, but there are 2 different yellows on these flowers for their alternate project. So we're going to do that again today, and that's why I wanted to have 2 of every color. So the Paper Pumpkin team had already done this, where we had those 2 blues, those 2 greens, those 2 oranges, so that if we want to create those 2-step images, we can easily do that with the coordinating colors that they use to create this kit. And then I'm just going to sneak in another yellow. Okay, so let's go ahead and just start digging into the kit and coming up with some ideas. If you love seeing Paper Pumpkin projects or alternate projects, be sure to subscribe to my channel. I show them every month. And give this video a like if you'd like to see more videos like this one. We're going to just go to the edge here. We're going to try to preserve as much of the envelope as we can. And we're going to cut. The concept is we want to be able to open the envelope, okay, and then cut those flaps individually. So I'm not measuring, just really want to get that edge. Okay, so we got these thin edge pieces, and we won't need those. And now we can open this up. All right, and then let's go ahead and we're going to start cutting. To start, just when you're, wanting to have some extra pieces to work with, I'm going to cut at the score lines. You can get more specific with cutting as you go along and figure out how you want your project to look. So the next thing that I want to do is I want to start stamping, and I'm actually going to start with the bonus set. Okay, so let's start here. Now I'm going to be bringing out some tools to use. Whenever I create alternate projects, I typically will start working with more tools. And remember, I consider myself more of an avid crafter. I craft multiple times a week. So I will tend to bring in more products than maybe other people need to use. You can use your clear blocks to stamp. If you're just starting with your 1 block, you can alternate with your stamps and your blocks. I am definitely one of those people who I'll put a stamp on each side of a block whenever I'm stamping, if you're trying to maximize the benefit or use multiple stamps at once. If you like to do repeat stamping, if you know you're going to be stamping the same image in multiple colors for multiple projects, like we're going to be doing with our flowers, then I recommend a stamp positioning tool. And that is what the Stamparatus is. It comes with 2 plates, and they are removable. Okay, so you can add them here with your hinges. You could work with 1 plate at a time if you want. It also comes with a foam pad. So this is printed on the bottom. It's a magnetic bottom. And then you also get this foam pad to help you with stamping. Whenever you are working with a photopolymer stamp, I recommend a foam mat just to have that little extra cushion, and you'll get a clean image whenever you stamp. It also comes with magnets on the bottom here, okay? So you can use your magnets to hold down your cardstock so that you can stamp multiple times without that paper moving. And then I use this, I think it's a 7x7 scrap paper pad, and then I just put the scrap piece right down over top of my foam. You can put your magnets right down on top of that, and you can start playing around with your images. If you want to stamp on your scrap paper first before you put your paper down, you could do that too. Okay, so what I want to do is start stamping some flowers and some leaves, and I want to do that in the 2-step process, so I'm going to show you how I do that. Okay, so the first thing that I will do is I will get the stamps that are similar. Okay, so the fill stamp is the real big, thick, chunky stamp, and the detail stamp is the one that is more of the lines. Okay, so we're going to grab our flower here. Okay, look at the size of that stamp. My goodness, absolutely fabulous. Okay, so what we're going to do, we are going to put this face down. So you see this side that's perfectly flat? That's the side that you would pick up with your clear block, and that's the side we're going to pick up with our plate.
Okay, so the thing that I want to emphasize here is that positioning does not matter at this particular moment. We just want to start stamping our images. These are going to be fussy cut as we go. You will see later in the video. I am going to do a second alternate card at the 30-minute mark that does not involve fussy cutting. So we'll get more specific with our positioning. But my design tip is just start stamping the images. You don't have to have a plan. Just get them down on paper and see what they look like.
Okay, so we're gonna leave this plate alone. So we're gonna keep everything just exactly the way that we want it to be on this plate. All right, we can clean that off in just a moment. I think we're gonna use it again though. We're gonna bring in our second plate and we're gonna put the hinges on. Okay, and now we're gonna go and we're gonna get that detail stamp that matches that fill stamp. Okay, so I'm gonna pull this off here. And now we're gonna line this up. So we're just gonna see how this looks once we set it down. So we want it to sort of line up. Doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but you can see that does fit very well, doesn't it? So what we're gonna do is leave that just exactly like that. And we're gonna pick it up with our plate, okay? And now we're gonna get that bumblebee ink. So let me get my bumblebee ink. Okay, and we're gonna ink this one now. And if anybody's wondering why my bottom label is missing, this is for anybody who owns our ink pads. My son loves stickers, and when he discovered they were removable, he was like, "Oh, new toy." So a lot of my sticker bottoms are missing. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take this detail stamp and we're going to put this down. This is a slightly darker yellow. I'm stamping this for the first time with you, so we're going to see how this looks. And again, if you have any tools that you want to use to give nice even pressure, you can do that. And then we're just going to be nice and slow picking this up. Absolutely gorgeous. So now let's take a look at the stamp set. And as you can see, I don't see any detail pieces for the leaves, and that's totally fine. We have some nice detail right in here. But there is a way that you can add that darker green if you want to. And this is one of the reasons why we create alternate projects, right? If you want to get that two-tone look and you want to get that with all of your flowers, we're going to add that into the leaf. Okay, so I'm going to take our detail stamp and we're going to set this one aside. We're going to bring this one back. And what I'm going to do before I put this down, okay, so we already stamped this once and it still has a little ink on it, and that's okay. I am going to bring in my 2021-2023 in color markers. So these are Stampin' Right markers. And let me just quickly show you the difference, okay, just in case you don't already know. All right, so I want Evening Evergreen because I know this is a coordinating color in the kit. All right, now there are the Stampin' Blends. Stampin' Blends are alcohol-based markers. They create beautiful shading. I've been working a lot with those, but you can see it looks different than a Stampin' Right marker. Okay, and a Stampin' Right marker is water-based. So Stampin' Right markers are almost exactly like ink pads where they are safe to color over your stamps. An alcohol marker you do not want to color onto your stamps directly because you don't want to damage the stamp. But with Stampin' Right markers, because they are water-based, they are safe to use on your photopolymer stamps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the detail on my leaf stamp with a second color using this marker. And there are two tips. There is like a writing little tip, really narrow tip, and then there's this marker tip here. we're going to work with the marker tip. And where I'm going to focus is where the designers of the stamps created those detail pieces right in the center of the stamp. So you can sort of see those veins. We're going to go in and we're going to add a little bit of evening evergreen. Okay. It's okay. Let's just see what this looks like. We're just experimenting. We're just playing. If it's not perfect, if we don't like it, we don't have to keep it. But let's just see what it looks like. Okay, so I'm going to put this back down. I'm going to come down gently first and see if this is lining up, and I think it is. So I'm just going to press down. Bring this up slowly. Wasn't quite perfect, but we can always reposition it, right? And you can see it's subtle, but we added in a second color of that green on our leaves. Now you can do that actually the very first time you stamp it, where you put your old olive down and then you just add these little bits of evening evergreen, or you could do it as the second detail stamp piece if you want. Totally up to you, okay? But this is a great way to do this. So
okay, so I'm going to jump back in with some voiceover here. I made it an executive decision not to include my unboxing and assembly of the kit in this video. The alternates video was running too long because we made several alternates, and I'm also walking you through my design process. But you can find my unboxing and you can find the assembly of the paper pumpkin kits as the paper pumpkin team designed the cards on my Facebook page. Okay, so the full replay is available there. Leave me a comment and let me know if that is important to you and you want to see that on YouTube as well. I can upload that as a separate video. I am really trying to understand from my audience right now if you like longer or shorter videos. Do you want your unboxing and your alternates together or separately? Leave me a comment and let me know. As for the design tip of going through this process, be sure to use your coordinating colors. You know, Stampin' Up! Is giving you the list of coordinating colors for a reason so that you can incorporate those products that you own that will match back with the kit so you can extend the life of your kit so that after your consumable pieces are gone, the paper, the embellishments, you'll be able to use those stamps again and again and again.
I'm going to be fussy cutting out all of these flowers now.
So if you do not mind fussy cutting, you're really going to love this element of the design process where you just get a bunch of colors out, you stamp everything in a bunch of different color options, and then you create these virtual die cut pieces on your own to position wherever you want on your alternate cards. But again, if fussy cutting isn't for you, stay tuned. You can even fast forward to the 30-minute mark if you would like to see the alternate card that does not include fussy cutting, because I wanted to have options for both of you. Now, for those of you who are loving the paper pumpkin kits, but maybe you haven't subscribed yet, I will have information in the description box below this video. I also have information on my blog as to how you can subscribe. It is a monthly subscription box from Stampin' Up, $23.50 a month as I'm recording this video. That may change. This is in the US. And if you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to reach out to me. These kits are very affordable and you don't need any craft experience to work with them.
Okay, so I have fussy cut out my images and I just kind of have them in little piles right now. And the funny thing is like as I was stamping these flowers together, I go back and I start looking and I realize we actually have a two-step middle for our flowers too. So at first what I thought was really just a design, it looks like it could actually be part of the flower. And one thing I should tell you, and I'm sure if you've seen previous videos from me, is that I don't always have it exactly right. Like I kind of figure it out as I go along sometimes. this kit is brand new to me, so we're just playing, right? So what I want to do is I just want to play with these two stamps for a minute.
I started to have a lighting problem where the daylight was coming in and it was blowing out my workspace. So I decided to speed up this part of the process of experimenting with the different color options of what I wanted the inside of my flowers to look like. For two of the flowers, I chose to do Memento Tuxedo Black, the solid piece stamped off one time, and the detail piece in full color. And then I did the third flower similar to the alternate the paper pumpkin shows on the back of the instruction sheet, where the middle is in the same color as the rest of the flower. So you can choose what you like better if you want that contrasting color, or if you want to keep the same color as the flower.
You can decide what you like better. Here we have a very contrasting color for the center. Here we have the same colors. And then here with the blue flower with the misty moonlight, it doesn't look so, too different because they're all darker colors. But there you go.
Okay, so here we are making card bases. Again, I'm pulling out that coordinating color product. We are going to do a card base in Bumblebee, Calypso Coral, and Misty Moonlight. Each of these card bases is the same size, which is 5.5 by 8.5 and scored at 4.25. Okay, I decided to save the paper pumpkin card bases for a different alternate project. So especially as it is in relation to the bonus stamp set, which is a slightly different theme from the whole paper pumpkin kit, it's okay to go and do your own card bases and your own layers. Don't be afraid to use that coordinating product if you have it. Again, this is about having ideas to extend the life of your kit and to take advantage of those bonus stamp set images.
Okay, so I'm going to bring in the stitched rectangle dies to give me some cleaner edges. You could also just cut out rectangles with your paper trimmer if you don't want to get into the dies in the Stampin' Cut emboss machine, but I am going to bring in my machine and we are going to cut these down, okay?
Okay, so this is the most fun part of the design process for me. This is when everything starts to come together. So if you are going through the design process yourself and you're kind of following through these steps where first you're just playing with all of the color palette from your kit, then you're taking a look at some of those design patterns that we get with those envelopes and you're cutting those pieces apart. And now you're starting to stamp and you're starting to see what these images look like and how they're coming together as you build them out. And now all of these pieces are starting to kind of come together like a puzzle. And you start thinking, okay, I think I'm just going to go with simple rectangle shapes for this. And then once you start die cutting those pieces, you can actually start building out your cards. You have your card base, you have your layers, you have your die cut pieces basically that you've stamped in, Fussy cut and created on your own. So this is the most fun part of the design process because this is where everything starts to come to life. And if you think about it, with the paper pumpkin kits, this is what the paper pumpkin team does for us. So when you're first, subscribing and you're getting your first box and your second month box and your third month box, what you're doing is you're taking a look at their instructions. You're just, going through the steps and you're adding the layers as they're telling you to. And you're really starting to see those cards coming to life, right? So as you start to build your confidence putting together kits, then you think, well, you know what? Maybe I would tweak or change this one thing, or maybe I don't want to add this particular die cut, but I would really love to stamp this image here. So what you start to do is you just naturally start to design. So here with our card bases, I just wanted to add in another element of those stamps just to kind of give some ideas as to what you can do. You can leave the card base alone and don't worry about stamping. This is tone on tone stamping, meaning it's Bumblebee on Bumblebee cardstock. And now as you add in your layers and you build out your whole card, it's just one more element that you can add into the mix. So you can really have some fun with this. I decided to keep the sentiments very simple. So that single, that single sentiment, hello, or celebrate, or thinking of you. I didn't get into any multi-step stamping with sentiments here. We just kept it nice and clean. And you can see how it all sort of comes together. So I did kind of keep everything tone and tone where the bumblebee flower is on the bumblebee card and so on and so forth. So when you do that, you can create a whole set based on those coordinating products, and you end up with these beautiful but simple cards. So when I'm designing alternate projects, very often what I will end up doing is having my whole, own card kit. Basically, it becomes a customized card kit of alternates, where if you get one layout that you really like this one, we're just keeping the same layout, but playing around with maybe a different background stamp like we are here. And by the way, while I'm looking at this stamp, I think that this trio of circles is meant to be used for the various sized flower middles on the inside of your card. So that's just something to shout out because I didn't show it in this video. But the important thing is when you find a card layout that you like, you can do it over and over and over again in those different coordinating colors. And before you know it, you have an entire card set all with that paper pumpkin kit that is an alternate set. So you have extended the life of that kit. And I just think that that is so much fun. So if you don't mind cutting up all those envelopes, you got a lot of patterns, or you can bring in your own designer series paper that can coordinate with those colors that you have. That's one of the best things about Stampin' Up! Is having those coordinating color products on hand so that you can really build off of what they've designed for you. Okay, so I decided to use the rhinestones that came in the paper pumpkin kit as the center of the smaller flowers for this series of cards. And now when we get to the Calypso Coral and Pale Papaya card, it occurred to me that we have that spool or that bolt of ribbon in the paper pumpkin kit, and you don't always get a bolt of ribbon in the paper pumpkin kit. So I wanted to incorporate that in some way. So I did decide to add that in as an element here. And the way I do that is just by getting some adhesive, tacking it down on the back. And then I cut a separate piece and then thread it through and tie a bow off to the side. I just feel like it keeps it simpler. I did decide to pop this one up on dimensionals because envelope paper is so thin. If you have something bulky behind it, like that little extra bit of ribbon there, it might not lay down flat on your card. So I just decided to pop it up on dimensionals to solve that problem. And you'll see me threading through that little extra piece of ribbon there. I would say give yourself a good 6-7 inches of ribbon, just so that you can play around with the size of your bow. But with the layout of this card, I didn't feel like the bow needed to be that big. But another tip that I would say is try to utilize as much as comes in the kit as possible, even on your alternate cards. Having the ribbon is so fabulous, and it lasts, so you're definitely going to have leftovers, because the original paper pumpkin cards, the ribbon is only used on one of the 3 cards.
For our next card, we're actually going to make a slimline card. So I'm not 100% sure, but I think this might be my first alternate card for a paper pumpkin kit that is a slimline. So we're going to recreate this pattern, but because I used Bumblebee for this card, I'm going to change it up, and we're going to go with Pale Papaya and Calypso Coral for our next card. So let's go ahead and recreate this alternate. For the basic white layer, we are working with 3 by 7 1/4. So we are going to be stamping a repeat pattern going down the paper. So if we rest this in here, we want to be able to stamp, stamp, and stamp our way down. And the reason that I point that out is because you want to make sure that your hinges are able to go in that direction. So if you have this positioned the wrong way, you might get a little bit stuck. So just make sure that you have your hinges lined up so that you can step your way down each hinge. Okay. So I have my fill stamps on one side. I have my detail stamp on the other side. We'll position it as we need to. Okay. So these are clean. So I'm going to get my ink. We're going to start with our lighter color here, which is Pale Papaya. Okay, I'm going to pull this off for 1 second because I forgot about my magnets. All right, so let's take a look at the positioning of the paper here for a second. This is pretty good. We're going to have to move our magnets as we go. Okay. And we're just going to repeat this process. If you need to re-ink, go ahead and re-ink. Let's see how this looks. I'm going to take my time lifting it up. Okay, that looks fine to me. So we're going to re-ink each time as we step down. Okay, so I'm going to reposition my magnets higher at this point. Okay. Let's put our magnet up here. And you can see that's a little too much overlap. So we're going to go down to the next notch. And even though we have some overlap of flowers here, this is perfect. So we're going to go every other notch. Take my time lifting up the plate, and that should release the paper. And then if we go the next, again, it's going to be too close. So we're going to go the next notch down. Okay. And that's going to give us a nice line up here. The lower you get with your hinges, the more likely the plate will move a little bit. So just be sure to keep it straight when you're stamping that last time. We're just going to press that down. Okay. And there we go. Isn't that beautiful? I mean, even before we start to build on this, right? So now we're going to go to the detail side. And I'm just gonna lay this down before I ink it up, and we can see this is really hitting on all the areas that we want. If it wasn't a perfect lineup, you would just take that stamp, line it up, and then pick it up with your plate like we did previously, okay? So, you know, don't get frustrated or intimidated by that. You learn as you go on the Stamparatus, but you could always reposition your stamps. Okay, So we're going to get our leaves now. You have 4 choices with your leaves. We have the largest, a medium size, and then we have these 2 little leaves over here. And we also have the center of our flower. So what you can do, and what I did here was just kind of found a couple of places where I liked where the leaves were sitting. So our little duo leaf right here, this guy, I just put this right here. And the way I did it was barely overlapping with the ink of the flower. Okay, so totally up to you. All right, so when you take a photopolymer stamp and you just tightly push it down, or not tightly, if you just, with a little bit of pressure, tap it down, it should stay on the paper instead of sticking to your finger. Okay, and then we're gonna take our medium size, I think it was the medium, let's see. Yeah, it was our medium size leaf, and I went right in between the little flower and the big flower right here. Okay, and then if I just tap that down, and you can see that same line up, it's very slightly coming off of the paper. If you don't, if you don't want to do that, if you want to see the full leaf, you could just reposition it slightly. Okay, totally up to you. I really want to try to recreate this as closely as I did the first one. And what I want to do is I want to be mindful of that overlap there. So I'm going to position it just like this, just so that it's really not touching this flower. At least I'm trying. So we're going to take a look and see how that looks. But when you're positioning it with the first flower, it's going to be the same with the other 2. So you just want to make sure that you're hitting it in such a way that it's not going to end up getting ink everywhere. And it's okay that it slightly comes up over this. I think it's totally fine. But you could decide, which one you want to do. So this is just Old Olive. If you would want to add that hint of Evening Evergreen to give that 2-tone look to your leaves, you could do that with your Stampin' Write marker again. And I can do a version with that just so that you can see what it looks like on the slimline, but it's the same concept. Okay, so with our middle piece, with our flower center, when I was building out my first alternates, I didn't realize this was the center right away. But now that we know, let's go ahead and add that too. Okay. Now we can add it at the same time, or we can add it on the other side. What I would say is, if you want to go quicker, you're going to have to be more careful with your ink positioning. I'm going to do it on the other side of the plate. I just think that's going to be the easier thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick this up. So we're going to pick up our leaves. Okay. And then on the other side, we're going to get our center. Okay, and you can see how it kind of sticks to me until I kind of tap it down. So I'm going to flip my plate over, and once you have your positioning, pick it up with your plate on the other side. Okay, and then we can go ahead and add this color. Okay, so before we say goodbye to our stamp positioning tool for the slimline, The next thing that we would do would be the sentiment. Now, you do not have to stamp your sentiment and repeat like this. You could just do the flowers and repeat and just stamp your sentiment one time. Or if you like that pattern of repeat, that's when you're going to want to keep your stamp positioning tool with you so that you can go ahead and repeat that pattern too. Okay, so what we could do is one of each, where we're doing something that we're just saying it the one time, or we're saying it multiple times. So you can decide which you want. You can also decide if you want it on your actual pattern, or if you would like it on a layering piece. Okay, so what I mean by that is if you would want to do, you know, like a layer like this, and, you know, lay it over and then stamp your sentiment there. So you would decide where you want it. Okay. I want to put it right on, you know, right on the pattern here. So let's go ahead and figure out which sentiment we want to put with this particular card. So I love the idea of celebrate. Okay, I think that that looks, when we do want something that we're really going to see, you could do hello. Okay, and you can decide where, you know, where you think that that will go best. You could do thinking of you. All right, and you could do that and repeat. I want to go with one of the larger, you know, sentiments here. So I think what I'm going to do for this one is do celebrate. Just want to make sure there's no ink on this. No, we're all set. And then we're going to position it where we want. So I'm going to put this right here over the middle one. And we're going to go with a nice dark ink here. Make sure that you're happy with how this looks and that it looks straight. Okay, and then you can come in with your plate and pick that up. So let's just pick this up. And then what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and add that color. You can decide what color you want it to be. I am leaning towards going towards a bold black. You could stick with your Misty Moonlight if you want. We could do Calypso Coral, but I really want it to stand out. So I'm going to go with Memento Tuxedo Black for this one. Just do something a little bit different, right? And I'm going to do this several times so that we have a nice, bold sentiment. Okay. And there we go with getting our positioning a little bit wrong, right? So let me make sure that's nice and clear, because I didn't remove my leaves, and sometimes I don't. Okay, so there's the first one. Let's get that a little darker. It's so fun to use your Stamparatus to really layer and really play and really build a scene. You could really take your stamp sets out for a spin. Look at how nice and beautiful that is. So, you know, one thing about this bonus stamp set for any of you who picked up the March kit, wow, right? How incredible is the value of this bonus set? You could just go crazy with this. I mean, there's so many things that you could do. Isn't that stunning? So for this card, we're going to do a Pale Papaya cardstock card base. I'm going to cut this to 8.5 by 7. On the 7-inch side, we are going to score it at 3.5. Okay. All right. I'm just going to fold that in half. Okay. So the concept of a slimline card, if you've never made one, if you're not familiar, is that a slimline card will fit into a business size envelope. So like a number 9 or a number 10 envelope that you would send, you know, your checks with your bills or something like that. Having fun with a card size that would easily fit in that kind of an envelope, or of course you could custom make an envelope. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to layer this on. So I really liked this embossed piece that came with the kit. This is what the full piece looks like. So this is what the half piece that we're going to use looks like. I already cut it because I used one on the first card. This is what the full piece looks like that comes in the kit. It's just that pop of texture and that pop of white. So the next layer that we are going to do before we add this piece, we're going to do Calypso Coral. Okay, so let me grab a piece of the Calypso Coral cardstock. All right, and so this piece, our basic white, is 3 by 7 1/4. So for this piece, we're going to do 3 1/4 by 7 1/2. Okay, and so as we start to build this out, let's go ahead and get our pattern now. Okay, so as we start to build and layer that on, okay, we're going to cut this piece in half. Okay. Okay, and so here are our slimline cards. Okay, so the colors for this one are Bumblebee, Misty, Moonlight, and we have a touch of Old Olive here. So we have the 2-step with the flowers, but we just have the Old Olive on the leaves. With this one, we went with Pale Papaya, Calypso Coral. We did the 2-tone with the leaves with Old Olive and Evening Evergreen. I did do the sentiment in Memento Tuxedo Black ink, and then I just did one sentiment on this card as opposed to stamping the sentiment on repeat on this card. So you can decide which you prefer, but I think that whichever you choose, they are both really gorgeous. Okay, so that is that alternate, and let's move on to the next one. For our next alternate, okay, I am going to bring back in the frames that we had cut out when we had cut up our envelopes. Okay, so when I was making these, this is the positive die cut from the envelopes, and then these were the negative die cuts. So anybody, if you've been to my channel before, you know I often talk about how much I love frames and framing. And one of the reasons why I love the cards so much from this month's kit is because they're already technically framed, right? Like we have some scenes here and then we have our pattern, but they're just, for me, it's like they're just asking to be framed. So my original thought was I would turn these into shaker cards. Now, the trouble with that is I do not have enough of the foam adhesive strips that I need to make 3 shaker cards, but I do have enough to make 1. So I'm going to go with this card here. But before I do that, let's just play with the patterns and the frames that we cut out with each of these card frames, okay? So one thing that I wanted to show you, and hopefully you guys can see all three of these clearly. Let's see. Okay, so here's our card front, here's our card front, here's our card front. And now let's just start laying these down and look at what these patterns look like when we frame each of them. Okay, so you can decide which you feel goes best with which. But whenever I'm designing cards, right? Whenever I'm designing alternates, especially, I will just start playing with images, right? Colors, textures, all of that. And one of the cool things about die cutting with the stitched rectangles is that regardless of which side you cut it on, you still see that pattern. You're not losing anything. It doesn't look weird, right? So if you want to go with the softer, more solid side, you could do that, and look at how beautiful that looks, right? And then if you're thinking, no, I think I want to do a little bit more of a bold pattern here, you could do that too. Okay, and you could decide, you know, oh, I think I would want to do, you know, some pattern here. Like for me, this yellow just does not do this scene justice. I love this. I love that. But we could also take a look at the sort of that greenish pattern and see if we like that one. Okay, so you play and you decide what you like. I'm going to show you guys what I like. So for this one, I'll tell you the truth. For this pattern card, I would go either way. I actually like them both. And I realize that the pattern is going in different directions, but you know what? It's kind of fun. So if you want to go with the softer, you would just do that side instead. Now I can't do all three, but I'm going to do one with you, but you get the concept, right? So you could use whatever, you know, whatever piece you would want for your shaker. We are going to need a window sheet. Okay, so the window sheets, you get 2 of them whenever you purchase those. They're 12 by 12. And we're going to trim it down to the size that we need. Okay, so here is our window sheet. I've already been trimming these down. But basically, we're going to trim the window sheet to be the same size as the card base. Okay, so we want it to fit on the full front there. Our frame is going to go right over top of it. We're going to use our foam strips, the foam adhesive strips, all around so that we create that barrier so that our sequins don't come out. Now I'm going to be using the sequins for everything, but you could use something different if you want to, you know, if you want to do that. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So let's go ahead and cut out our window sheet.
Okay, so the measurement that we're cutting out for the card sheet is the same size as the card base, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Don't be afraid to use your paper trimmer with a window sheet, even though it's thicker. It still cuts like butter. I will say, if you are going to cut multiples and multiples of this, and you're going to be making, you know, 9, 10, 20 shaker cards, then you might dull your blade a little bit because you're using a different type of material other than a thin paper or cardstock, right? But if you're just doing this a couple of times, no problem on your paper trimmer. You do want to make sure that your blades are sharp or that they're not completely dull too. Now, with building out with these foam adhesive strips, what I'll say to you is that I tend to cut my strips in half. They actually arrive when you order them much longer than this. But because I'm constantly working with a card base size that's typically, you know, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, I just find it easier to cut the strips down. And then if I have any holes like I do here, I just take smaller pieces that are left over and kind of plug them in. The idea is that you don't want any of those sequins to escape out of this frame, right? Because we're creating that shaker. And don't forget to add your shaker element before you set that window sheet down. I can't tell you how many times I've forgotten, and it's such a pain to pull it apart. So I went with the gold, white, and silver. I think I had already said that, but I added them again here. And can you see that little piece that snuck in? There's a little bit of a static cling situation sometimes, so you just want to tuck that back in. You don't want anything messing with your adhesive barrier. And then I just used tear and tape adhesive to add my frame on. And, you know, again, once your window sheet is down and you know it's secure, give it a little extra press so that you know that that's secure. Those sequins should just sit in there perfectly fine if you're worried about those coming apart. But hey, this is a perfect card to give to the kids if you like to have those little extra fun elements there, right? Like we didn't necessarily do any fun folds today. I don't know if you'd call a slimline a fun fold, not really, right? Just a different type of card. But this is our super fun element for an alternate. And it's a very simple one, honestly. This is probably the easiest of the 3 cards that I've done in terms of an alternate. But the artwork was so beautiful, I just didn't want to mess with it. So that's why we kept this so clean and simple. And we let the sequins be the fun in the shaker card, right? So, you know, just keep in mind with your shaker cards, they're a little bit thicker and you may need a different size envelope.
Okay, and so there we go. We have our shaker card. So technically I would do 3 of these. And then with this one, I would probably mimic, let's see, it's right here. Okay, so for this card, okay, this is how they built it, where we have multiple layers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay, and then our gemstones, right? So on this one, let's just imagine if this were a shaker. So you could do all of these die cut pieces just as they did. I would not do the ribbon on the inside. I would save the ribbon, the embellishments, and the sentiment for the outside. Okay, but this is what it would look like framed. All right, so if you were going to do that, I love what they did here because this is a little less clear of an image than this one. Okay, but totally up to you how you would want to do that. But I think that that would be beautiful as a shaker. Okay, and then if you have those, the rhinestones, or, you know, it doesn't have to be the sequins is my point. And then for this card, this is what the Paper Pumpkin team did. Okay. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I got some ink here. So basically I would cut up this card because I got ink everywhere, but just pretend with me for a moment. So here is the Paper Pumpkin version. A lot of different layers here, right? So what would you do, right? If you would want to turn that into a shaker, would you keep their design and do your framing there? So you can just keep that in mind as you're designing, and you can just add those little extra pieces, you know, if you would want to. So anyway, I hope that you enjoyed, this process today. So here are the Paper Pumpkin design cards. All right, and here are some of our alternates. So there we go. Now, I really hope that you enjoyed today's alternate projects and the assembly of the Paper Pumpkin kit as it was designed by the Paper Pumpkin team. My question to you is, let me know in the comments if you are comfortable. Do you like longer videos where you get to see everything all in one? You get to see the unboxing, you get to see the assembly, and you get to see some alternate ideas as kind of like a big mega Paper Pumpkin video? Or do you like it broken down into smaller chunks? Would you like the unboxing video to be separate from the alternate video? Let me know. I would love to hear from you. All right, that's it for today. Be sure to stay tuned for the next video.